So in my last video, you saw me perform a design review of a local business's website here, walking you through the different recommendations and feedback I would provide in order to make it a better website design and layout overall. Now today I'm going to take it up a notch and we're going to redesign that website's homepage from scratch and see what the difference would make if I were to design it myself. Alright, so I've got my Figma file all set up here for us to get started designing. On the left is the screenshot of the existing homepage design, and on the right is our new frame set up to begin our design. And so one of the first things I want to do is set up our layout grid, because I always want to make sure our content aligns to the content container. And so we're going to choose our frame, come on down to layout grid at the bottom, choose columns. Then we're going to make that, let's pull this up. We're going to do 12 column grid, bring this down to about 4%, do a margin of 120. And 120 is the difference between the total frame width and my container width. So my frame is 1440 pixels. My container width I like is 1200 pixels. So the difference between the two is 240 pixels, and then you divide that by 2 to have 120 on the left, 120 on the right. Alright, so we've got that grid set up, and as you can see, I've already got a header with the navigation set up already in a new layout. If we click Shift G, we can hide our grid there. We can kind of see the difference between the two so far. On the right, I made the new header layout full width because since they have so many menu options, currently with their existing site, it's going to have to break down to that mobile menu far too soon by keeping the header contained. So I wanted to make it full width, and then I made the call to action button a little bit more prominent and included the phone number there in the top right. Now, before we get started designing, I wanted to show you I did already have the text styles set up for the site with H1 through H3, a few different alternate text styles, and then my color styles also. So this will help us speed up this process and be much more efficient. Now, as we first look at the website, the first part of it is the $29 new patient special. Now, this on the live site, it shows it below the navigation. And because of this, this bar is only going to be present on the home page itself. So what I like to do is put that bar above the navigation on the top and make that present across the entire website. We don't only want to promote that new patient special on the home page, we want them to see it no matter what page they're on. So I'm going to go ahead and add a bar. We'll put the orange primary color as the background. Then we'll go ahead and type in $29 new patient special. And we will choose the body large text. Now this white text does not pass accessibility on the orange background, so I'm going to go with the dark color. And then in my assets, I set up a few button styles for us to utilize. I'm going to go ahead and pull in this black button as I think it stands out the most. We'll say book appointment. And then by choosing, hitting K on your keyboard, we can then scale this button as needed. I want to go ahead and scale it down specifically for this top bar just because it's a little bit slim and we want to make sure it fits in there nicely. So then we will align those to the middle. I will click Shift A to make those a auto layout, and then I will click on centering that to my frame itself. Alright, so we'll put this up a little bit, just center it in that orange bar, and then we want to make sure that our spacing between the header and our top bar is at 16 pixels or 1 rem. Alright, so next up is the hero section. So as you can see here, we've got the picture of the doctor with the heading and a button. Now, I'm really not a fan of this existing layout and the orange box overlaying it, putting text on top of an image, especially when the image already has text on it, really just becomes difficult being able to read that text and just makes it too busy, right? So I think what we're going to do, and let's go ahead and choose our frame, click Shift G just to make sure that our guides are visible again. We're going to pull in that image from our library here. I downloaded them prior to this video. And I think what I'll do is go ahead and put the image here on the right hand side. I'm going to stretch this out to be a little bit taller, and then we'll choose that image and say fill. Then as we choose crop, I can adjust this accordingly however I'd like. Now I necessarily don't want the name of the business to be cut off here on the image, so I'm going to see if I can squeeze this in here as far as I can. If I count my grids here, so we've got 12, right? And I would really like to maintain at least 4 of those grids, or 1/3 of my content width for the text. So if I go ahead and shrink this down to about there, that's going to give me 4 columns here on the left to work with and input my heading text. Now on this image, I want to add just some very slight border radius to soften up the edges. And then we can come in here and start typing. So we'll say, get back to feeling great with quality chiropractic care. And I want this to be an H1. All right. And so maybe we shorten it and say, feel great with quality chiropractic care. I think that actually sounds a little bit better. And then if we add a little bit of space here, because we're going to have some extra gutter in between our columns here, it pushes that down on the next line. Now, I don't love the widow here on the next line at the end, but sometimes it's difficult to really do much about that. So I think we'll leave it as is for now. We're not trying to get it perfect, just trying to get it to a point that we like. All right, so now what I like to do is add a subheading of the business name. So we can put a subhead, and we can change the color of this maybe to this dark orange. So in my color palette, I've got variations of that primary orange, and the darker one suits us better from an accessibility standpoint. All right, so we've got that set up, and then what we can do is go ahead and add our primary button in here. We want to use this orange one for the book appointment. And then we could go ahead and add a secondary button. Let's do the text only button. And then we'll just detach this instance because the bottom line on this, I haven't figured out how to make that more responsive. And so I'm just going to take out that bottom line and line that up with my second button. And then add about 2 rem of spacing in between that and the heading. Now if I grab these all together and then drag them up, I want them centered up with that hero image. And perfect. I think that's looking a lot better, much cleaner and inviting, and still brings that picture of the doctor and doesn't bring the issue with the overlaying text on top. All right, now as we look down the page further, we've got a couple of sections next. There's this 3-column section with the 3 boxes, and then we've got a single section here with the experience true relief. Now, for me personally, I think I'm going to swap these. I want to put this next on the page and then the 3 cards below that. So what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and grab this text. All right, I've grabbed it from the website, and we can go ahead and create a text box and paste that in. Now, we want this to just be body copy that is set up as one of our text styles. And I think what we want to do here instead, let's add the H2 experience true relief. And we'll change that to an H2. And go ahead and add that on top of our text paragraph here. Now, I think what I want to do here, because I don't favor stacking pictures in sections back to back necessarily, I like to try to break that up as much as possible. I think what I want to do is leave this on its own and center it on the page. I'm going to go ahead and center this as well and center the text. And then what I would recommend is changing the width of this text box to 800 pixels. That's kind of my default for a narrower width on a body copy. And I would probably recommend slimming down this intro copy to be a little bit more precise. And so I would actually get rid of these last two sentences because some of it was a little bit redundant and not totally necessary. All right, so now we've got sort of an intro paragraph here, and I think what I want to do is add a little bit of visual interest to break up into the next section. So what I did was I already grabbed their logo and put it into a vector format here, and what I like to do is put it in the background with some opacity. Designing on the fly like this can be a little bit tough because some things take time and come to me later on, whereas my initial ideas don't always pan out. I think what I'm going to do is actually blow it up quite a bit here on the right hand side of the page and have it overlapping and make it even a little bit lighter down to about 8%. I like that. I think it does include some visual interest there. Pulls in their branding and kind of helps break up that white space. All right, so next up is those 3-column section here with meet the doctor, what to expect, and chiropractic treatments. If you remember when we hovered on these on the website, it revealed the button, and that's definitely not a good user experience. So I'm going to totally change the layout and design of these 3 columns and include the buttons without having to hover. So if we go ahead and bring back our grid here, and since we have 12 columns across and we've got 3 cards, each of these can be 4 columns wide. Now go ahead and add about 4 pixels of corner radius, again to just soften the edges. I'm going to bring in the images real quick so we'll have those ready for us and available. All right, and then we need to go ahead and add the text. So it'll say, meet Dr. Smith. And we'll change this to an H3. It looks like my H3 style is a little bit bigger than I normally like it to be. It's set to 36. Let's bring that down to 32. And then the text underneath, we'll change that to body copy. And then narrow the width of that box just a hair. Now I'll go ahead and quickly add the rest of this text in here and be right back. All right, so I've got the text pulled in, and now we really want to work on the design of this card. Now thinking ahead, I think what I want to do is add a colored section next below this, a background color. And so I think that the background on these could be white, and we could add a very light stroke here with a light gray. Keeps it real subtle. And then what we can do is go ahead and bring in a button. I think what we'll do is bring in the black buttons as our secondary button and say about us. Then we can kind of pull this up a little bit. And we can pull in the image of the doctor here. Now I am going to tighten it up a hair because I don't need the image to be so big. And once again, I'm going to add about 2 pixel border radius on the image, just to make sure, again, to soften the edges of it a little bit better. We'll bring down the heading text a little bit to pair it up with the body copy. Again, we've got a widow here on the second line, which I really don't love. We can always edit this copy, so I would recommend adding a couple words just to help break that up. So, meet the chiropractor who will provide expert care when you visit us, just for example. So it just looks a lot better, and not really a big deal to add a little bit of extra words there. So then as we grab this content, we want to drag it and make sure it aligns to the center of our card. And then I'm going to bring it down a little bit just to give it some space in between that one and the body copy above it. And then we'll go ahead and duplicate it using Shift, Option, and dragging. So I'll go ahead and drag in the new text. And of course, our third card here is too long. So I would really recommend we change this to something shorter and say our treatments. Again, sometimes it's about manipulating that copy to really suit the design a little bit better. So what to expect, you can say our process, and then our treatment, say view services. Now, once again, we're going to pull in the images. All right, so now as we zoom out and shut off our grids, we can see this is looking really good. We've got our 3 columns, the same content as the other website, a little bit better design and color choices, so it's easier to read, a little bit better hierarchy within the layout as well. All right, so as I mentioned, my next section, I'm going to put in a color background, and what's next on the page is a testimonial. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and put our grids back on. And then we're going to click R and add a rectangle. Then if you click your left bracket once, it automatically pushes it to the back. Now this is not visible because likely it didn't get put on our frame. So if I drag it off, then drag it back on, it'll get input in our frame there for us. All right, so once again, click the back bracket. So the color choice for our background, I think what I want to go with likely is an extra light gray, or do we want to go with extra light orange? I think it's maybe the orange, and as a result, I think I want to change the outlines on the stroke of our cards, maybe to a little bit brighter orange here. Yeah, I like that a lot better, and maybe we can even add a very subtle drop shadow. We'll change the blur to about 16. Spread will go down to -5 or so, and then bring it to a 15% opacity. kind of just helps those cards stick out on the page a little bit more. All right, so we bring back our grids using Shift G, and we need to add the testimonial. All right, so I've got my testimonial text, and I'm going to go ahead and just paste that in here. I need to change the text style to body, and I think maybe even go up to body large. And thinking about the design on this, maybe I'll do it on the right hand side. Pull it out to 3/4 of our layout, and we can put in the name of the user, Dr. Mike G. Dr. Mike G. Actually make that bold. And I'm going to break this style because I want this name to be a little bit bigger. And I think what I'll do is go ahead and add some stars in here. So if we open up our shape tool, we can choose a star. And we can then add some fill. We're going to add a yellowish gold color, dark enough to help contrast. And we'll go ahead and duplicate those using Option, and then once I do it once, I can click Command D 3 more times and have 5 of them ready to go. Whoop. All right. I think I'll put those stars at the bottom, the name of the person from the testimonial on top. And I think that looks pretty good. I like that. We're just missing one thing. I need to make sure to add the quotes here so that it's recognized as a testimonial. Now we're going to tighten up this space a little bit, move this up to about 80 pixels of spacing in between my sections, usually at a minimum. So we're at 81, that's pretty dang close. We can go up 79, we're close enough, right? Good enough for who it's for. And again, as a reminder, I'm not designing this pixel perfect exactly how I might if I would spend a few hours like I normally do designing a new page. We're just trying to show, in general, an updated design layout for this site. All right. So moving on, the next section, we've got this 2-column sections about a couple of their services. And so I think what we can do is probably, I'm not sure I want to keep the 2-column layout with the image on the right, text on the left, or whether or not I want to stack it. And the beauty of Figma, if we turn off our grid again, we can kind of zoom out and see what we're working with. And I feel like overall, since I'm already stacking image and text here, maybe we will keep that 2-column layout with text on the left, image on the right, rather than having image on top and text on the bottom. So if I go ahead and drop in the first image for spinal decompression, I think what I'll do is actually shrink this down a bit. I just don't like that image in its entirety. I would really recommend finding a new image, just that's a little bit more attractive. I realize that this is probably a good representation of what the service is, but it's a little bit odd showing on a website. So if we look at this, we've got this spanning 6 columns, so it's perfectly lined up halfway. And then we need to go ahead and grab that text. All right, so I've got my text, and we're going to say spinal decompression. This is going to be an H2. And insert a text block, and it's inheriting the H2 that I previously put, so we'll change that to a body, and then resize the box to fit a little bit to the text height. And then if we bring that all the way over to halfway, and then I usually pull it back a little bit because of the extra gutter that I always add once I'm building. And what we want to make sure to add is a button here also for either a book appointment, or we can say view treatment. So that way it'll lead to the treatment page for spinal decompression. And I'm wondering, I'm going to play with real quick an idea if we wanted to put this inside a box here with no fill, just a stroke. Again, let's use that orange and then put a 6 pixel border radius. And then if we bring in our text off of the edge, open this up again and move over our button. And then bring our image down to the bottom. So since we cut that image off because I didn't like seeing the whole thing, didn't really think it's necessary to see the bottom of the machine or the bed, I like to put it all the way to the bottom so that we don't have to see that cut off edge, and it's instead sort of encompassed by this border. So then I'm going to push my left bracket and push it behind so that I see the border on top. And yeah, actually I really do like that a lot better. So I'm going to shrink this box down to kind of appear a little bit more even all the way around. And then we will pull it up, and we've got 80 pixels of margin in between our box and the section above it. Now this one, I'm going to go with about 60 pixels of margin in between those. And we can say laser therapy. Now if I grab that text, I'm just grabbing this off screen from their website. And go ahead and paste that in. Get rid of these extra spaces. Looks like we've got an extra space there. All right, and then we can go ahead and add that laser therapy picture as well. Now again, I'm not crazy about this image in particular. It feels a little bit elementary, not super professional. So I would recommend sourcing a better image here. I'm just resizing the box to fit the same width as the image above it, going to 6 columns wide. And then I'm going to control the corner radius so that the top right is 6 and the bottom right is 6, just to match the frame around it. And then when I choose the image and I say fill, and if we crop it to appear a little bit more on that laser therapy as the focus, I think that works okay. It looks like we've got to resize our box just a hair. All right, then I'm going to go ahead and hit that left bracket again to push it to the back and make sure that my border is visible. And all right, that looks good. So laser therapy, view treatment, spinal decompression. We can click Shift G once again to remove our guides and see our layout. And I feel like this is looking really good. We could technically alternate this, maybe put the image on the left, text on the right. In fact, let's go ahead and just do that. I think sometimes it breaks it up. It's not completely necessary at all times, I think, depending on your design. If we look at that really quick, yeah, I think that looks a little bit better. So we do need to change our border radiuses to the top left and bottom left to 6. But everything else should be perfectly good to go. All right, so last on our page, besides the footer, is this call to action: schedule your free consultation. Now we can kind of act on this in a way that the CTA can be tied to the footer. So I would make this schedule your consultation a global element that does stick to the footer on all pages That way we have a consistent call to action at the bottom. And once again on this, I would recommend creating that call to action with the orange background, because that orange is going to be what draws the user in the most. And we want to bring our guides back, and we can say schedule your, oops, I need to learn how to spell, free consultation. All right, and then we're going to change that to an H2, change the fill to our dark text for accessibility, and align that to the center of our page. Now this one, I think actually we'll use the white button and say book appointment. And on this one, I actually want the button to be a little bit bigger than most. Just kind of roughly ballpark it there. Then we'll choose our two elements and center those on our bar. Now I might actually look to narrow this down to about the 800 pixel width. Actually, let's go 1,000. And then we want to add some corner radius. Let's go with 6 pixels corner radius. And there we have it. We've got our call to action set up for the page. Now we can tackle this footer. We've got quite a few elements. We've got hours, we've got contact information, we've got their logo, we've got some association images as well. So we've got our work cut out. And what I can do is I've already got in my design starter file some footer layouts that I can pull in and drag and customize from there. So what I think I'm going to do is maybe grab this footer layout, and I can go ahead and detach this instance because I want to really manipulate this and obviously not have my logo, but instead the client's logo. So we'll drag in that logo from our global assets here in our Figma file. And we can change this information. We'll say hours, and then we'll say contact. We'll paste in the hours here, which are definitely a little bit bigger, so we're going to have to spread this out. I always want to make sure and line it up with my grids to just keep consistent. And we'll break this body copy because I want to actually manipulate the line height to be a little bit tighter than usual. We're going to also bring over our contact information, and we'll copy that. Just reformat that a little bit better. And then what I want to do, because they had leave us a review links at the bottom as well, I'm going to go ahead and just put those below the contact information. So I'll say leave us a review. And we'll need to go ahead and put Facebook, and Google. And of course those will be clickable links once this was built out. And I think we can actually go ahead and just break this copy and make this bold here, maybe medium, just so it stands out with a little bit of hierarchy from the rest. Alright, so we'll get rid of this content on the right. We can leave these social icons, put them as the dark orange, maybe align them over here. Actually, I like them better as a darker color. Align them over there with the logo, and then we can bring in those association and alumni logos here on the right. So we'll just resize those to look a little bit better. Align it to our grid. And then if we kind of stretch our background box a little bit, I need to go ahead and change up. It's already set to extra light. That's actually what I want it to be. And then if we pull this up to about there, I'm going to pull this background box up, click the left bracket and push it to the back. Again, that's an easy way to just push content to the bottom of your layers here so that it always appears below the rest of your content that you're working with. All right, so that's really it. As I mentioned in my last video, the design review, I don't recommend putting the Google Map embed on your website. It does not help performance. So I'd recommend just linking your address to the Google Map listing, and that way users can get the address and information they need from there. So as we take a look at the website as a whole now, it's pretty interesting to see how long the content was drawn out prior to how condensed it is in the new design, yet still feels much more cleaner and aesthetically pleasing than prior. So with really just realigning some of that content, making sure the hierarchy is in place, pulling through the brand colors and making sure that it's consistent throughout with that, really can help your website just look so much better and more professional. I really appreciate you sticking with me through that redesign of a local business's website. I did not make any design decisions on this prior to hitting record for the video. So as you can see, I was kind of working through some decision making on the fly, and as the design process usually goes, it's not always cut and dry and easy to proceed. Sometimes things click, sometimes they don't. But at the end of the day, I think we ended up with a redesigned homepage that's definitely cleaner and really caters to those key conversions for the website and booking an appointment. Thanks a lot for watching. Be sure to hit subscribe if you like watching my videos, and I really appreciate your support.